Have you ever looked at your grocery bill and thought, there's no way food should cost this much? $250 for a week's worth of basics? And it's gone in days. My grandma fed 8 people year-round from a backyard garden that was 20 by 30 feet, maybe smaller. No grocery store, no delivery apps, no panic buying when things went wrong. Just soil, seeds, and a system that actually worked. Her family never wondered where dinner was coming from. She spent maybe $50 a year total on seeds and canning lids. That's it. We're spending $10,000, $12,000 a year on groceries, and still feeling like we can barely keep food in the house. How does that make any sense? I help people understand money and how to stop wasting it. But this isn't just about money. This is about a skill set we've completely lost in 2 generations. If you want to understand what we gave up and how to start getting it back, subscribe. Here's what most people don't realize about how Grandma gardened. It wasn't random. It wasn't just throwing some tomato plants in the ground and hoping for the best. It was planned. Every single inch of that backyard was being used for something, and it was all timed so that there was always food ready to harvest. Most gardens today are basically decorative. They look nice. Maybe you get a few tomatoes in August, a handful of peppers, some herbs you use once or twice. It's treated like a hobby, something pretty to look at while you're having coffee on the patio. That's not what Grandma was doing. Her garden was utilitarian. There was no wasted space. Pole beans growing up the corn stalks, lettuce planted in the shade between the taller plants, herbs lining the edges as natural pest control. She was using vertical space, ground space, even the timing of when things matured, so that as soon as one crop finished, another one was ready to go in that spot. This is called succession planting, but Grandma didn't call it that. She just knew that if you planted lettuce every 2 weeks instead of all at once, you'd have fresh lettuce for months instead of 40 heads all ready on the same day that you can't possibly eat before they bolt. And it worked. There was something ready to pick every single week. Early spring, it was lettuce and radishes and peas. Summer was tomatoes, beans, squash, peppers, cucumbers. Fall brought root vegetables, more greens, late-season crops that could handle frost. Even in winter, there were things stored from previous seasons. Compare that to the gardens you see now. Beautiful raised beds, perfect rows, everything Instagram ready. And at the end of the season, maybe $50 worth of vegetables total. Maybe. You spent more on the materials to build the raised bed than you got back in food. Grandma's garden, if you actually tracked the output, was producing the equivalent of $3,000 to $4,000, zero worth of groceries every year. At modern prices, probably more. Tomatoes alone, if you're buying them at the store for $3 or $4 a pound, she was growing hundreds of pounds. Beans, same thing. Peppers, cucumbers, squash, all of it adding up to serious grocery money that just never had to be spent. But it wasn't just about planning the space. It was about knowing how plants work together. What needs sun and what tolerates shade. What depletes the soil and what replenishes it. She rotated crops so the soil stayed healthy. One year the tomatoes would be in one spot, the next year they'd move, and beans would go there because beans fix nitrogen. None of this was complicated. It was just knowledge. Practical knowledge that got passed down, and that most people today don't have anymore because we've been told we don't need it. Just go to the store. It's easier. And yeah, it is more convenient. Until you realize you're spending $200 a week on vegetables you could be growing in your backyard for basically free. And here's the other part people forget. The garden was only half of it. Where does your food come from in February? From a truck that drove 2,000 miles to bring you strawberries that taste like nothing and cost $6 for a small container. That's what we do now. Grandma's system worked year-round because she preserved everything. Those tomatoes from August? Canned. Jars and jars of them, sitting on shelves in the basement. They'd last until the next August when the new tomatoes came in. Green beans? Same thing. Pickles, relishes, jams. And the stuff that couldn't be canned went into the root cellar. Potatoes, carrots, onions, squash, stored in a cool, dark place, lasting for months. She'd be pulling potatoes out of storage in March that were harvested the previous October. This wasn't complicated. It was just how people kept food before we all decided that having every type of produce available every day of the year was somehow a right we deserved. And we pay for that convenience. We pay a lot. A modern family spends $800, maybe $1,000 a month on groceries. That's $10,000 to $12,000 a year. For food that often goes bad before you can eat it. For produce that's been picked unripe, shipped in refrigerated trucks, arrives at your store already days old. You're paying premium prices for mediocre quality. Grandma spent maybe $50 a year. Seeds cost a couple dollars a packet, and one packet would produce enough vegetables to fill dozens of jars. Canning jars and lids, maybe another $20 or $30 if she needed to replace any. That was it. Everything else was free. The labor was free. The preservation methods were free once you had the basic supplies. The food lasted longer, tasted better, and cost almost nothing. And the soil. Modern gardens, if you're doing it the way most people do, you're buying fertilizer every year. Bags of it. Soil amendments. All this stuff to try to make your soil productive. And it works for a season, maybe, but then next year you need more. Grandma's soil got better every single year. Compost from kitchen scraps and garden waste went back into the soil. Crop rotation meant that nutrients depleted by one type of plant were replenished by another. The soil became richer, darker, more alive with every passing year. By the time I was old enough to remember that garden, you could dig into it with your bare hands. It was like chocolate cake. That's what happens when you work with natural systems instead of fighting against them. But we've replaced all of that with complete dependence on grocery stores. We buy food that's traveled thousands of miles. We throw away the scraps. We plant grass that requires constant maintenance and gives us nothing in return. And we spend $800 a month doing it. Let's talk about what this actually meant economically. When you buy vegetables at the grocery store, you're not paying for vegetables. You're paying for transportation, warehousing, middlemen, retail markup, all of it. The actual cost to grow a bell pepper is maybe 15-20 cents. You're paying $3 for it at the store. Think about what that means. A packet of pepper seeds costs $2.50. That packet has enough seeds to grow 40 plants if you're even halfway decent at it. Each plant produces somewhere between 5 and 10 peppers over the season. So you're looking at 200 to 400 peppers from one $2.50 seed packet. At $3 each in the store, that's $600 to $1,200 worth of peppers, from $2.50 in seeds. Grandma never thought about return on investment. She never calculated cost per serving. She just knew this was how you fed people. But she was executing a perfect economic system without even trying. Every dollar that didn't go to seeds stayed in the family. Every jar of preserved food was food security that didn't depend on having cash when you needed it. We've been trained to think gardens are expensive hobbies, something you do if you have extra time and money. Meanwhile, we're spending $10,000, $12,000 a year on groceries and acting like that's just normal, like that's the only option. The math is absurd when you actually look at it. A family spending $800 a month on groceries is spending about $26 a day. Every single day. And a lot of that food goes bad before it gets eaten. Produce that sits in the fridge until it's mushy. Leftovers that get forgotten. We're throwing away hundreds, maybe thousands of dollars worth of food every year while simultaneously complaining that groceries cost too much. Grandma's system had almost zero waste. You picked what you needed when you needed it. It was fresh, so it lasted longer. What couldn't be eaten immediately got preserved. What couldn't be preserved went to chickens or into compost. Nothing was wasted because waste meant you went hungry later. And here's the thing about time. People say they don't have time to garden. They're too busy. But you're spending time at the grocery store, right? Driving there, walking the aisles, waiting in line. That's an hour, maybe 2 hours a week. Plus the additional trips because you forgot something or ran out of milk. Grandma spent maybe 30 minutes a day in the garden during growing season, less in spring and fall, almost nothing in winter. That time paid better than most jobs if you calculate the value of what she was producing. But nobody thinks about it that way because we've been convinced that buying food is normal and growing food is some kind of luxury hobby. It's backwards. So why did the system disappear? If it worked so well, if it was so economical, why did everyone stop doing it? Because nobody profits when you can feed yourself. After World War II, there was this massive shift. During the war, everyone had victory gardens. The government encouraged it. Grow your own food, support the war effort. People were doing it out of necessity and patriotism. Then the war ended, and suddenly the message changed. Suburbs started spreading. Lawns became the thing. A perfect green lawn meant you were successful. A vegetable garden meant you were poor or backward. At the same time, grocery store chains were expanding like crazy. They needed customers. They needed people dependent on buying food instead of growing it. So the culture shifted. Home economics classes started teaching women how to shop efficiently, not how to grow and preserve food. That knowledge just stopped being passed down. Within one generation, most people had no idea how to garden seriously. It became this quaint hobby thing, not a normal life skill that everyone had. The food companies loved it, seed companies especially. Heirloom varieties, the kinds of seeds Grandma saved and replanted every year, started disappearing from catalogs. They got replaced with hybrid varieties that produce better in commercial farming but don't breed true. You can't save the seeds. Well, you can, but the next generation won't be the same plant. So you have to buy new seeds every year. Then came GMOs and patents. Now some seeds are literally illegal to save and replant. You have to buy them new every season. The seed companies made sure of it. This is planned dependence. Not just planned obsolescence like with phones that break after 2 years. This is making sure that each generation is more dependent on the system than the last. Grandma could feed herself. Her children sort of could, but didn't because it wasn't fashionable. Her grandchildren, my generation, most of us can't grow anything. We've been completely disconnected. And it's profitable. Enormously profitable. When everyone has to buy food, food companies make money. When everyone has to buy seeds every year, seed companies make money. There's no money in teaching people to be self-sufficient, so they don't. Instead, they sell you the fantasy. Now there's this whole homesteading lifestyle brand, expensive raised bed kits and fancy tools and online courses about composting. Gardening has been repackaged as a luxury hobby for people with disposable income, not a basic survival skill. The irony is that Grandma's seeds were free. She saved them. Now if you want those same varieties, you pay $5, $6, sometimes $8 for a packet of, quote, zero seeds. You're paying premium prices for what used to be normal. But this isn't really about money. It's about what else we lost when we gave up growing our own food. And what we lost is way bigger than the dollar savings. Grandma never worried about food. Not really. If the economy crashed, if there was a drought and food prices spiked, if stores ran low, it didn't matter. She had food. Always. Jars in the basement, vegetables in the garden, potatoes in the root cellar. Her family was secure in a way that most people today just aren't. We saw what happens when supply chains break. March 2020. Remember that? Empty shelves, people panicking, fighting over toilet paper and canned goods. And that was just from people being scared. The food system didn't actually collapse. It just got disrupted slightly, and everyone lost their minds. Grandma lived through actual crises, the Depression, wars, periods when money was tight and jobs were scarce, and her family ate. Not great meals every night maybe, but they ate. They never went hungry. Because the garden didn't care about the economy. The preserved food didn't care if there was a run on the banks. That's what real food security looks like. Not having 3 grocery stores within driving distance. Not having a pantry full of processed food. It's having the skills and systems to produce food regardless of what's happening in the world around you. We don't have that anymore. Almost nobody does. Most people under 50 can't preserve food. They don't know when to plant what. They can't identify vegetables growing in the ground. I've met college graduates who thought potatoes grew on trees. That's not an exaggeration. And it's not just skills, it's resilience. Our entire food system runs on about a 3-day supply chain. Everything in grocery stores right now, that's it. If trucks stop delivering for 3 days, shelves are empty. Most families have maybe a week of food in their house, if that. One disruption and millions of people are in trouble immediately. Grandma's family could go months without outside food if they had to, probably longer. The basement was stocked. The garden was producing. They knew how to stretch what they had. That's not just about having food. That's about not being terrified every time something goes wrong. Then there's the community aspect. Grandma didn't garden in isolation. Neighbors shared surplus. If she had too many tomatoes, she'd trade with someone who had extra beans. They helped each other with big jobs. There was this whole network of people who knew how to produce food and supported each other in doing it. Now we barely know our neighbors. We definitely don't share food with them. Everyone's doing their own grocery shopping, buying their own stuff, eating in their own houses. We've lost that entire layer of community resilience. And kids. Kids growing up in Grandma's house knew where food came from. They worked in the garden. They helped with preservation. By the time they were teenagers, they understood the basics of feeding themselves. Kids now think food comes from stores. They have no idea what's involved in producing it. Can't identify vegetables growing. Don't know what in season means. They're going to be even more dependent than we are because they're growing up without any connection to food production at all. And the worst part? This didn't happen by accident. The loss of this knowledge, the dependence we're all trapped in now, it's not some natural evolution. It's profitable, extremely profitable. Think about the seed industry. Grandma saved seeds from her best plants every year. Those seeds were heirlooms, varieties that had been around for generations, bred to be reliable and productive. She never bought seeds except maybe to try something new. The seeds were free, part of the system. You grew food, saved seeds, planted them next year. Self-sustaining. Now those heirloom varieties are disappearing. They've been replaced with hybrids and GMOs that you legally can't save and replant. Or if you can save them, they won't breed true. The next generation will be different, inconsistent, not worth planting. So you have to buy new seeds every single year. The seed companies made sure of it. This is planned dependence. Not even planned obsolescence like with phones that stop working after 2 years. This is making sure you can never become independent, ever. You have to keep buying, year after year, because the system has been designed that way. And it's not just seeds, it's knowledge. Grandma's expertise, everything she knew about growing and preserving food, that was free. Passed down through generations. Common knowledge that everyone had. Now, it's been turned into a product. You want to learn how to garden? Take this online course. Buy this book. Subscribe to this app. Pay for consulting. The knowledge that used to be free is now something you have to purchase from the same companies that benefit from you not having it. Look at the homesteading movement. It's been completely repackaged as a lifestyle brand. Beautiful Instagram accounts showing perfect raised beds in aesthetic mason jars and rustic farm vibes. And it's expensive. The gear, the courses, the seeds from boutique companies. It's marketed as something special, something luxurious, for people who have the time and money to pursue this hobby. Meanwhile, for Grandma, this was just normal life. It wasn't a lifestyle choice. It wasn't aesthetic. It was how you survived. And it cost almost nothing, because you started with saved seeds and built soil over time and learned from your parents and neighbors. No courses required. But there's no money in that. So the whole thing has been turned into a consumer product. You're supposed to buy your way into self-sufficiency, which is completely backwards. Seed companies are selling heirloom varieties now for $5, $6, $7 a packet. Those exact varieties that Grandma had for free because they'd been saved and shared for generations. You're paying premium prices for what used to be normal, for what should be free if we hadn't lost the knowledge and the seeds along with it. and every generation it gets worse. Grandma could feed herself completely. Her children could sort of do it, but mostly didn't. My generation can't grow anything beyond maybe a tomato plant. Our kids will be even more helpless unless something changes. Each generation more dependent, more disconnected, more convinced that food just comes from stores and always will. That's profitable for food companies, for grocery chains, for seed companies, for everyone selling the products and services we need because we forgot how to do it ourselves. They don't want you to be self-sufficient. They want you dependent. And it's working. Look, I know what you're thinking. I don't have space. I live in an apartment. I don't have time. I kill every plant I touch. And I get it. Not everyone has a backyard. Not everyone has the time Grandma had. The world is different now. But here's the thing. You don't need to replicate Grandma's entire system to benefit from understanding it. Space. You think you need a big yard. You don't. A balcony can produce more food than you'd expect. Lettuce grows great in containers. Tomatoes in pots. Herbs in window boxes. You're not going to feed your whole family off a balcony garden, but you can grow enough salad greens for the summer, enough herbs to stop buying those $4 plastic containers that go bad in 3 days, enough tomatoes to make a difference. Time. Everyone says they don't have time, but you're spending time at the grocery store every week. You're spending time cooking food you bought. Once a garden is established, it's maybe 15 minutes a day. Watering, picking what's ready. That's it. And yeah, the first year takes more time because you're learning and setting things up, but so does anything new. This is a skill that pays you back in food. Knowledge. This is actually the easiest problem to solve. Grandma learned from her parents who learned from their parents. You have YouTube. You have books. You have entire communities online. The information is more accessible now than it's ever been. You can learn more in a week of research than Grandma learned in years of trial and error. Start simple. 3 plants: lettuce, tomatoes, and herbs. Those 3 are hard to kill and produce a lot relative to the space they take up. Cost for seeds in basic containers? Maybe $20. That $20 will produce hundreds of dollars worth of food if you don't completely neglect it. And even if you do mess up, even if you kill the first round of plants, you're out $20. That's less than 2 trips to the grocery store. The learning is worth it. Cost. People think gardening is expensive because they see those fancy setups. The raised bed kits, the automatic watering systems, the premium soil. You don't need any of that. A bag of potting soil costs $8. Seeds cost $2 to $3 per packet. Containers can be anything. Old buckets, plastic storage bins with holes drilled in the bottom. Free. Compare that to your grocery bill. If you spend $800 a month on groceries and you can grow even 20% of your vegetables, that's $160 a month saved, nearly $2,000 a year, for a $20 investment in seeds. I'm not saying you need to do exactly what Grandma did. That's not realistic. The world is different. Most people don't have the space or the time or the circumstances she had, and that's fine. The goal isn't to stop going to the grocery store entirely. It's to reduce how dependent you are on it, to build some skills, to have a backup plan when things get expensive or supply chains get disrupted. Even if you only grow 10% or 20% of your food, that's significant. That's money saved. That's skills learned. That's resilience built. Food prices aren't coming back down. They're going to keep rising. The food system is going to keep getting more expensive and less reliable. That's the trajectory we're on. You can either stay completely dependent on it and hope nothing goes wrong, or you can start learning to produce some of your own food now while it's still optional. Start small. This spring, plant 3 things: lettuce, tomatoes, and basil. Seeds will cost you maybe $10. A bag of soil, another $8. 3 containers you probably already have. Total investment, $15 to $20. Time investment, 20 minutes to set it up, then 10 minutes every few days to water. Track what you harvest. Look up what it would cost at the grocery store. You'll be surprised how fast it adds up. That one tomato plant will probably produce 20 or 30 tomatoes over the summer. At $3 a pound, that's real money. The lettuce will give you salads for weeks. The basil will save you from buying those $4 plastic containers that go bad before you use them. Next year, add a few more things. Build on what you learned. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to feed your whole family. It just has to be better than doing nothing. Because here's what Grandma understood that we've forgotten. It's not about perfection. It's not about being completely self-sufficient. It's about not being completely helpless when the systems we depend on fail or become too expensive. It's about having options, having skills, having something growing that you can eat if you need to. You can keep spending $10,000 or $12,000 a year on groceries and hoping prices stabilize. Or you can start learning to spend $8,000 or $9,000 by growing some of your own food. That difference, that $2,000 to $3,000 a year, that's money that could be invested. That could be savings. That could be building actual financial security instead of just disappearing into grocery stores. Most people won't do this. They'll keep buying everything. They'll keep complaining about food prices while doing nothing to reduce their dependence on the system. But you're not most people, or you wouldn't have watched this far. So plant something. Lettuce, tomatoes, basil. Track it. Price it out at grocery store rates. You'll see what Grandma knew all along.